From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is someone who has defied expectations and broken significant barriers, earning a place of recognition within the international skydiving community. Zainab Alibhai, originally from Kenya, took her first skydive in 2014, a life-changing experience that set her on a remarkable path. From that moment, she embarked on an unconventional journey, traveling across the globe to log enough jumps and earn multiple ratings. Today, Zainab is not only a tandem instructor, AFF instructor, and senior rigger, but she's also the proud owner of Go Jump Kenya, with operations in 2 locations. Her inspiring story of perseverance and determination in becoming a Dropzone owner is a testament to anyone facing obstacles in the pursuit of a dream. It's an honor to welcome Zainab Alibhai to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Zainab, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, James.
It's an honor to have you with me. For our audience that's listening in context, I met you earlier this year in Poland at the European Skydiving Symposium, and right away, I knew you were different. In the most positive expression, I felt a drive about you that made me pay attention. Something different about this lady. I was so keen to want to interview you because you made such a strong first impression. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yes, it was absolute pleasure to meet you back there, and obviously today as well. And we have kept in touch via email quite a bit, and it's been an honor of mine as well, for sure.
Before we get into your journey, I want to learn a little bit more about your background, including where you're from and your family. How did your upbringing influence you as a person? Can you share?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I am Kenyan. Although I do not look like any regular Kenyans, I'm light skin colored, brown. Most Kenyans are naturally the African skin color, black as you would like to call it. My dad and mom I come from a very conservative background, but we were a big, happy family. I've got about 12 brothers and 2 sisters. We all grew up together in this one big house. My dad was a chef, and so are my uncles, and so are my cousins. And I grew up around the kitchen, which I love doing as well. One of my favorite hobbies. And sisters were very. I've got older sisters, so I was the youngest one, and that's been my family background.
Extraordinary. I was going to ask if you had siblings. You have many siblings. What do your siblings think of their sister doing what she does?
Well, they think I'm a little bit crazy, for sure. But I do have a big support from them. When my dad passed away, my mom did her first tandem with me. Yeah, coming from, like again, saying a very conservative cultural background, it was quite difficult for her to do it. But in order to understand me better as a person, because I have been a rebel as well, just to call it that way, and then taking up skydiving, it was a bit intriguing to her and shocking, and to my family. So she did her first tandem, which was one of my proudest moments in my life, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. When she did come down, when she landed, she said, "This is the closest I've ever felt to the higher power." And that was just phenomenal.
I can't imagine, particularly if the perception is, our daughter is going off the rails, living this very non-traditional lifestyle, and then to have an appreciation from your mom of what you're doing must have been very gratifying.
It is, and still is up today. I mean, every other day she's going to call me and ask me how the drop zones are going and how is the skydiving and all that. She's so much more involved now. It's a blessing.
What were you like as a student, and what did you study?
Well, I did my high school. I haven't had much background on studying per se because my family had another path for me. But then I did go to college a little bit, and then I have done IATA, International Air Travel and Ticketing, and I used to be an interior exterior designer decorator. I had my company for 10 years before I became a skydiver.
Fascinating. So I was going to ask prior to getting into skydiving what your interests and hobbies were. So interior, exterior design,
Yep.
very interesting. And you mentioned, and if I may delve into that, maybe your family had different intentions for what you would do professionally. Can you share about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, they wanted me to have kids and be a housewife and all that, but I wanted to be different. I've always been a little bit different.
Would you say, and this is coming from a family where there are many black sheep in my family, if you were, that are non-traditional in what many people would think. And certainly my family thought I was crazy when I got into skydiving. So were you always the quote unquote rebel growing up, would you say?
Yes, well, I also grew up around boys, right? I mean, I've got eight cousin brothers and then two real brothers, but my at the end of the day, I would just be on the field playing football or cricket or doing all the climbing trees and all the boy stuff. And yeah, it was a bit challenging for me back then as well.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Burble. Zainab, many of our audience, and myself included, we only know what we know. We've not grown up, say, in Kenya or have visited Africa. Can you give us a sense of what it was like growing up as a young girl in Kenya and how that has shaped you today?
Kenya is a beautiful country. We have multicultural people here, like from different backgrounds, different religions, and different colors as well, like I just mentioned to you. When I was growing up, I went to a school that had all of it. So initially, when I started going to school, we had like different cultures together, right? And we do have a lot of expats living here as well. People who come to work in Kenya from different countries. So for me, it was a little bit easier growing up. Obviously, from the coming from, let's say, a wealthy family as well, it was easier. But however, my dad would make me or make us walk to school. Never had it easy, or come to the restaurant and work after school hours to get pocket money or something like that, right? But growing up in Kenya, I think I would have never wanted to grow up anywhere else. It is it is a safe country. It is beautiful. We have everything here, from the beautiful beaches to the wildlife to the silly Murram roads, or this horrible traffic as well. So it's a good place to grow up.
It sounds amazing. And for those that are listening, I'm seeing you on as we speak, and the background is beautiful. I mean, I can just tell it looks very tropical and quite beautiful. Maybe we will need to visit Kenya. It looks.
Maybe you have to. You absolutely have to.
Tell me about my perception of you. As I mentioned at the opening of our interview, you seem highly focused and on a mission. Is my perception of you accurate?
Yes, it is.
And what drives you? Where does this drive? Particularly when it's easier to not be pushing the boundaries. I think, culturally, particularly, I should say in skydiving, it's very male dominated. And if you're in a country where skydiving is not as understood as some of other countries, people are going to be saying, whoa, who are you? Why do you think that you should be doing this? You might, many might have the opinion that you're out of your lane, if you will.
Correct.
So it would be easier to sort of ride the status quo and do what is expected. Why? I mean, it's one thing to go and do, to be pushing up against resistance, but, to open a drop zone in Kenya and, the misunderstanding of what skydiving is all about, it would just be easier not to be pushing the boundaries. Why? Where does this motivation come from to compel you to push against everyone that's sort of saying, you shouldn't be doing this?
Right. So Kenya did not have a parachuting association when I first started. And when COVID happened, I came back from Chicago in 2019, and COVID hit. Well, it was the beginning of the COVID, and I couldn't go anywhere for skydiving. And this is what I love to do. I wake up smiling because of just the thought that I'm going to go for a skydive today, or be talking to skydivers, or just interact in any way in the skydiving world. And yeah, so when I came back, I couldn't go anywhere, and with the support of friends and family, I at that point I already had my Tanam rating and AFF rating, and they were like, "So you hold the highest licenses as a Kenyan person, let alone being the woman, the only one. Why don't you open the drop zone in Kenya?" I had thought about it back, several times, but it happened sooner than I had expected it to happen. And yes, so I started focusing. My entire focus was towards that, opening a skydiving center where people can still go, because around East Africa we didn't have any. So that kind of like put shackles on my feet, as if you will. And I do not like being, inbound or put to the ground. And that's where my focus came towards, and my drive to open the skydiving center in Kenya again.
As we're talking about starting it, how did this all begin? What was the circumstance that led you to making your very first jump 10 years ago?
Correct. I did my first tandem, and as soon as I landed, as I touched the ground, I knew that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. 2 weeks later, I signed up for my AFF course, and voila, this is who I am now.
What is that like? I mean, were you able to progress relatively quickly through AFF in Kenya, or, I mean, you could go to, say, Skydive Chicago and get your AFF your A license in essentially a month, if not faster, depending on the weather. But how was that progression?
It was a slow progression, also because I still had my company, Multi Shades Decor, and I had 150 people working under me. It was quite a big, exactly, company. So it was over the weekends or over 2 weekends, something that I would be able to go for my AFF jumps. And yes, it took a long time for me to get there. And then I went for some tunnel time in Dubai. And that's where and then was like, okay, this is how it works. And then started traveling to different places, which when I started traveling was my progression level went really quick. 2 years later, I mean, well, I had about 300 jumps or something when I went first to Chicagoland Skydive Center. And there I did 214 jumps in 1 month. So that was pretty awesome. As you see, I jumped my ass off.
One thing that I didn't realize is that your company was so large. When you hear, I'm an interior designer or decorator, usually you hear that might be one person working with homeowners, but it sounds like you're much more scaled, which to me sounds like it would be even more challenging to leave such a busy business to go abroad and jump your ass off.
Yes, correct. I did have really good managers and helping me, and I decided, okay, fine. For the first year I was traveling, I was like, okay, I can manage both. Very quickly I understood, no, skydiving does take a lot of your time, energy. You need to be focused about what you want to do, especially the way that I wanted to go towards becoming an instructor one day. So eventually, I did have to close my company down and pursue my dreams.
Was that hard to do?
Well,
To just close something that, because it takes a while to build a business that's
it's true.
successful. You've
Yeah,
done
it's true.
that, and to just walk from it.
Yeah, I did have that company for about 10 years, and I started from my home. I just did a friend's house, and they were like, "Oh wow, this is pretty cool what you've done with for us." And then it was word of mouth, and yeah, within 5 years, I had like large offices, and then yeah, it grew. I didn't have a website, I didn't have Instagram or Facebook back then. But it did grow very well, and it was hard to give it all up. I still haven't given it all up, to say, even when I opened this Dropzone here, I've helped a few people in Whippingo Ridge where I live, to do that on the side, and just like a side hobby. Still, I still love doing it.
You end up at Chicagoland Skydiving Center. I know Doug Smith. He's a friend of mine. How did you end up at CSC versus anywhere else in the US?
So I was researching where I can go and do as many jumps as possible. And bless Doug, he had this program back then. I'm not sure if he still has it, but you could buy a jump package for a month, pay a certain amount, and unlimited of jumps. So yeah, when I researched about it and I found his drop zone, I just emailed him from Kenya and I said, "I'm coming to your drop zone." Yeah, Doug has become a dear friend of mine as well, and he does mentor me for my drop zones. He's helped me out quite a bit, and so has Hank from Skydive Mossel Bay. That's where I used to work. Big shout out, thanks to them.
Yeah, I've known Hank for a while as well, and a fabulous operation at Skydive Mossel Bay.
Right.
It looks beautiful. It looks amazing. You've decided that you want to do this. You go to Chicagoland. I know you've spent time in Dubai. Can you give us a sense of sort of the breadth of your travels to get more jumps and eventually to get your ratings?
Yeah, I can. So Dubai was the first place that I ever went for outside Kenya. Love that drop zone. Skydive Dubai is amazing, and obviously I went for tunnel time. Learned quite a bit over there. From there, I did well. Chicago was my second location for skydiving. Then obviously I had to visit Skydive Chicago, the next drop zone. Went for a boogie there, and obviously did more jumps. Thereafter, I got my coach rating at Chicagoland Skydive Center with world leader. What is it? WSLN. And then from there, I went to Germany. My examiners, Carl Wade and Rochelle Hall, were there, USPA examiners, to Skydive Firebird at Bitburg. And then from there, I came back to Kenya and then went to South Africa. Oh, and then yeah, when I was in SA, I got my PASA ratings as well and my jump master rating with Hank.
When you decided to get your tandem instructor rating, and I have a good friend of mine that just got it,
Okay.
and he has been in the industry for a long time. I've been in the industry in various different roles for over 20 years. And we see tandem instructors all the time at drop zones, right? And I think we take them for granted in terms of how hard it is to be a TI. I mean, how difficult was it for you? It's not an easy rating. It's not an easy job for really anybody. Did you find it surprising how difficult it was, or was it even difficult for you?
It was a bit more difficult for me. I am 5'1" something, or 5'2", and I weigh 50 kilos. So I'm not. I'm a tiny petite person. So yes, it was difficult. I did go through a lot of training before that, like going to the gym and getting my muscles ready. Obviously, the tandem rig is heavy and it hurts your back as well. So I did all that, and yeah, I found it difficult, but in terms of learning the process and how the instructor ratings and whatnot, I think, in my opinion, Carl Wade did a wonderful job with me. He was very strict and persistent, and yeah, at times I did come back and cry. I was like, "Oh my God, what the hell am I doing?" However, the AFF rating was much harder, in my opinion. So I did both of the ratings with Carl.
How often are you doing tandems in AFF today?
Not often enough. Being a DCO is obviously it's a whole different ball game. I always have instructors here with me. They do the jumps, I do the logistics, and yeah, I am the DCO. So it's like I can't do everything really. When I opened up, I decided to get two instructors here. This is a two instructor operation, and they help me out with the jumps, and I do most of the time. I do the outside camera for the clients.
If you're a fan of the 20-minute call, I'd like to invite you to be a member of a budding community with me on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests and gain access to some show swag. It's pretty sweet. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. Zainab, would you share with me some moments in this journey where you really doubted yourself? We know that the narrative and the story is, wow, look, you're accomplishing so many big things. You are doing things in a country that is not Chicagoland Skydiving Center. Can you share some moments in your journey where you really doubted yourself to think, oh, am I doing the right thing?
I will kind of like rephrase your question, if I may. I have not doubted myself that I want to do something or I wanted to achieve something. I have doubted the process. Just to give you an example, it was very difficult for me to get aircrafts initially when I opened up. Nobody trusted, the skydiving world, and aircraft owners didn't trust the skydiving world, and they thought, oh well, they're going to mess up our planes and not have any doors or change everything. I have had quite a bit of challenges in terms of getting aircrafts, in terms of getting the paperwork done. Like I also mentioned, in 2019 when I came back, there was no parachuting association. So the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority asked me to write my SOPs. Thankfully, my examiners, Carl Wade and Michelle Hall, were here with me, and they helped me to, with all the paperwork, getting it all done. It did take 2 years for all that to be approved. At that point, I was doubting, like, what am I doing? I could go back to Chicago and be a happy person there, or to South Africa or anywhere. And so, yes, that was it. After that, I've had a few more doubts. Just recently opening my second location in Diani, I had to get Department of Defense clearance for that location. And that was another process where I was like, what am I doing?
I read that in this process that you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I almost found it hard to believe, was that you camped out in a tent for 5 days outside of sort of the military headquarters in Kenya to try and help expedite this process. Can you share with me some details about that?
Yes. Initially also that I had to get the clearance for Ripingo as well, basically for any location in Kenya, right? The military have now got involved in the civilian parachuting, and that was also a big challenge. I tried to get in touch with the people to help me out with that, and it was quite difficult. So I did camp out and try to meet the colonels or brigadiers. This was about 3 years ago now. And finally, somebody came out and said, we're sick of her, so we need to get her inside the building. And that's how they met me. Obviously, I had submitted all my paperwork and whatnot. And when I went into the room, there were like about 10 colonels and brigadiers sitting around the table. And just like I said, I've described what I look like. And this tiny person just walks into the room and says, hello, this is me, Zainab. I'm the Kenyan who's wanting to get clearance for parachuting, civilian parachuting in Kenya. And they all just looked at me somehow terrified of me. But it was a good moment. And then I had to like present my passport as well, that like, yeah, I'm the only Kenyan who wants to open up drop zones in Kenya. And I finally walked out of there with the clearance.
Why do you think they said yes to you? Because it would be very easy for them to say no. And I want to sort of set the stage here. There was a pre-existing drop zone. Without getting into too much detail, had soured the taste of skydiving in Kenya, as I understand it. Why do you feel that they said yes to you? Because there was enough like skydiving, not feeling so good. Who is this person? They were probably not expecting to see you, a 5'2" lady, walking through the door with this mission to open up a drop zone.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like we're almost dancing around the fact that the odds are completely against you.
Hmm.
Why would they say yes to you? I don't have clarity on that.
Okay, so they said yes to me, because I'm Kenyan. I'm born Kenyan. I went in there with the highest ratings that nobody has in Kenya, being obviously the coach rating, AFF rating, tandem rating, and then being a senior rigger as well. So that was one of the things that they required. So in between, like I said, when I started the process, they did get back to me and said, "Hey, but what if you have a malfunction? Blah blah blah. Who's going to pack your reserves?" So I had to go back to the States in between in 2020 and get my rigging ticket with Derek Thomas at Elite Rigging Academy, which was also a very amazing experience with him. So yeah, I basically ticked off all the boxes and what they required from me, and that's why they couldn't say no.
And did you really camp out for 5 days in a tent?
Yes, I did.
Extraordinary. Can we go one level of detail, maybe a bit deeper, in terms of the challenges you face as a DZO in Kenya versus maybe a DZO in the US or Germany or in the UK? Are there challenges that you have to face that maybe other DZOs don't?
From my experience that I have worked in the drop zones, the airstrip is right there. So the just to get into the plane and take off with maybe you do probably they do also have to let the towers know that parachuting is happening right now. Here the challenge that I have faced well in Vipingo mainly also is we do have to talk to the towers in Mombasa and in Malindi. So Vipingo was in between these two locations. So yes, sometimes we had to wait for the clearances to jump out. Especially now, I'm facing it a little bit more in Diani because Diani is a commercial airport. Sorry, and but they have accepted that. Yeah, okay, she's opened it up again in Diani, and will they have actually been super nice to me and encouraging and supporting as well. So I'm grateful I'm grateful to the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority and the Department of Defense. Without these guys, obviously, the parachuting would not happen. And then the other challenge is that apart from me, I do not have any other instructors here. So I always have to bring instructors from outside to come and work with me.
Do you feel added pressure being a female DZO in a country that doesn't fully understand what skydiving is all about and why it's so fulfilling? I mean, it almost, with many would say it's just a crazy activity. So do you feel added pressure, like if you put foot wrong, like is there more pressure of if something happens, the scrutiny is going to be more on you than say your typical DZO? Or if I may be so bold as to say, if the DZO was a man versus a woman.
Absolutely. I think you're right over there. But in any sport as well, as you and I both know, that it is a men's world out there. It's always going to be a little bit more challenging for women to come across their point or to prove, maybe even prove themselves, right? To themselves and to the task at hand. So, yeah, it is a bit challenging and stressful.
And so how do you navigate that? I mean, it's hard enough. There's a lot of pressure running any business,
Correct.
much less a drop zone. And then that added burden, and yet you seem very cool under pressure. But it's got to be, let's be honest, it's got to be really annoying
It is.
to have that added societal pressure of having to prove yourself in this man's world.
Yeah, yes, it is. But like I said, I do have a great support from everyone that I have met over this, over my journey and in this process. So if I do get stressed, I'll just pick up my phone and talk to somebody, and they'll calm me down, or just say, "Okay, you've got this. You have this. So just like push through it." And yeah, things get done then. It is obviously having lots of support from the skydiving community as well.
Mm.
I mean, like today, just you meeting you again. I feel like, wow, this is an achievement for me. Talking to James.
Well, I'm humbled by that. I don't feel that I'm extraordinary in any way, but I do hope that you feel, sort of a world away from where a lot of the skydiving activities are happening, certainly in the US and in other countries, that we see you. I caught wind of you and go, wow, what she's doing, without trying to have hyperbole or to puff you up at all, Zainab. It is hard in any country to run a drop zone, but to do it in a place where it's not embraced and to have the challenges you have, it's completely inspiring. And I want people to know of you and of your drop zone because it's so hard, and you're doing it so well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure about doing it so well, but I'm trying my best to do it.
And I would only expect you to say that. Look, on the day to day of running a drop zone, particularly in a coastal area, there's stress, right? I know that I used to feel a lot of stress where, oh, maybe we're on the line with winds, or someone breaks an ankle, or all the things that go. What would you say has been your hardest day of being a drop zone owner?
Having tandems and it's raining and we're in the equator and I'm like, why the hell is it raining? Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just making fun of it. No, yeah, I face. So we land here on the beach, so I do have to deal with the high tides and low tides and the winds, and I always have to be very particular about when we're booking the tandems or any skydiving activity for, I mean, like boogies as well. So when are the people going to be jumping? So apart from having a normal drop zone, I still have to deal with all these other factors as well. So sometimes I feel stressed about that. Sometimes people would be like, no, but I want to jump at 9 o'clock. And my friend, no, 9 o'clock is going to be very high tide. We're not going to be able to lend you then. No, but 9 o'clock is the only time I'm free. So I have to explain to them. It takes longer for people to understand where the drop zone is and why I have to give them certain times and days as well.
As a female entrepreneur in a male dominated sport, Zainab, what advice would you give to young women looking to break into industries where they might feel underrepresented or out of place?
It's not impossible. So go for it, do what you want to do, and follow your heart, follow your mind, follow your gut, and go for it. That's what I would say to anyone, not just any, to a woman or a man, to any human being who wants to do something in their life, they should go for it.
Awesome advice. So if you were to reflect back, looking at your younger self, what would you say to her before she embarked on this journey?
You should have started skydiving way earlier. Yeah, I did get into the sport quite late, but again, yeah, just do what you got to do. Embark on whatever you want to do in life. So the now is now, and why wait for tomorrow?
Zainab, I'm always curious about people's story in terms of that crossroads moment. That had you not made a small decision or said yes to something, or maybe met somebody that it was unlikely that you meet them, but that meeting ends up changing the trajectory of your life. Is there a crossroads moment that was key for you to where you are today?
Absolutely, and it is very profound as well. When I did start skydiving, I did not tell my parents. They used to come visit me here in Mombasa every 3 months or something, and my mom and dad were at my house for a few weeks, and every weekend I would go away for to do the jumps, and my dad would be like, "So, are you working on the weekends as well? What projects are you doing?" Because obviously I had my interior design decorating company then. So isn't it just like Monday to Saturday you're working, and then you can spend some time with us on the weekends? So after a couple of weeks, I set them down and I said, I need to show you guys something. I was already a licensed skydiver by that point, However, I showed them my first tandem video. I said, please, can you guys sit down, watch this, and we'll talk about it after you've seen this. So they were like, fine, let's watch whatever you want to show us. So they watched my first tandem video, and I looked at them and I said, this is what I've been doing. And now I've got my licenses, and I'm traveling as well for these purposes, and I want to become an instructor. And I think that was my crossroad when both my parents looked at me and said, we're very proud of you, of what you're doing. A few weeks later, my dad passed away. So if he had not given me his blessing, I would not be here where I am today.
Let's go back to that moment, Zainab, as I'm closing my eyes as I speak to you because I'm having empathy. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. I imagine you had to have been so scared or nervous about how they would respond when they saw you doing what you were doing in that video. How nervous were you?
Absolutely. I was shitting bricks. And out of respect, I would have I, I would have tried to explain to them why I like it, and the community. Obviously, they did understand that it is a sport. It is a fantastic community, skydiving community that we have. We look after each other, no matter where we are in the world, right? I wanted to explain to them that this is family as well. This is my family that I have chosen, and I didn't want to choose between families. So yes, it was scary, one of my most scariest moments ever. And when they just smiled and they were happy and said, we're proud of you, I was like, the world of just lifted above my shoulders. And I was like, yes, I can do this now.
I have to believe that was a huge, huge relief to have their acceptance.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, why was I hiding from them from before, And I get it. And I actually get it now, watching people doing tandems, and, people would come up to me and say, yeah, we haven't told my mom, or we haven't told my family. I'm going to do this for myself. I haven't told my husband or my wife or my partner. And they want to do it because it's for them. And I totally get it. And some of them would say, please, don't put it on social media till we have spoken to our families or our loved ones. And I know, because I have been in their shoes. So I give a lot of respect to that.
The expectations, I don't think that parents mean to do this, but as children, you always want to live up to the expectations of one's parents, of what they have hopes for you. And similarly, my parents have always been accepting of my journey, but, at the same time, it's so non-traditional, and additionally doesn't have security, your traditional sense of job security, and
Correct.
that you will be safe and all those things. And that it's a lot to carry if you decide that, hey, I want to go in this direction for me.
Right.
And that's a big step.
Absolutely. And yeah, when I was traveling, obviously they used to get nervous, where is she going? Who is she going to be with? Where is she staying? Who is she going to call if something happens to her? And I did have to explain to them that, well, look, I'm going to safe drop zones, and there are going to be people there. And if anything happens to me, obviously they were worried about accidents, which, it happens in our industry. How are you going to get yourself sorted out? How are we going to come to you, or how are you going to come back to us? There's a lot of thoughts and questions in their heads, and they used to ask me. And even right now, whenever I've traveled, my friends and family will ask me, especially my brother Aziz, he's like, can you please tell me where you're going, where you are, and you're safe. That's it. Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people of Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Marketing. Tell me about your mentors. You mentioned that Doug Smith at Chicagoland, certainly those you got your ratings from. Who are your mentors, or who do you look up to in the sport?
Well, there are quite a few that I look up to for sure. Omar El Hegelim is one of them. He's come to my to the drop zone here last year 4 times. He's also been a big supporter, a very good friend, skydiver, tandem instructor called Kareem Madur is very dear to my heart, and I do consult him on quite a bit of stuff. And he's been through my journey. My best friend Rochelle, who is also an examiner, Carl Wade, Derek Thomas from Rigging Academy. There's Sasha from Dubai. He's a master rigger. So there are quite a few people that I do look up to, and I want to, have maybe be like them one day. Maybe like you as well, that I would be able to do a podcast, not being nervous. Yeah, recently I also had when I met you in Poland, I also met Noah Watts. I have a lot of respect for him. I got the honor to meet Bill Boots. Maybe we'll start manufacturing parachutes for Kenya one day together.
Zainab, I think that anything you decide that you want to do is entirely possible. That seems clear to me. Other thoughts or questions I have is, what does a typical day look like for you?
With a cup of tea. Start off with a nice cup of tea. No, to be serious about it, typical day is getting on phone calls, emails, getting on for bookings. The last 6 months have been my project to open the second location, which I must say I achieved in just 2 years of opening the first drop zone. Super proud of that. So a typical day is just doing normal drop zone owner stuff. And obviously, I'm a rigger as well. So every now and then, I'm going to be checking my own stuff, parachutes and whatnot, and making sure everything's safe. And then I sometimes play tennis. I've just started playing golf, which I live on a golf course. So it was half expected of me to learn how to play golf. Yeah, and then swimming, looking after my dog and my cats.
I'm glad to know that you're a DZO that is not living and breathing at the drop zone all the time, particularly with 2 locations. Are you able to lead a reasonably balanced life? Because most DZOs, it's not. It's full on all the time.
I mean, it's also debatable what you mean by not living a drop zone owner's life. People meet me, they're like, the whole time you're just thinking about work or talking about skydiving. So, except for the time that I'm playing tennis. And even then, I would be like, it was easier in skydiving this way or that way. So, I do compare a lot of stuff with skydiving and being a drop zone owner. A friend of mine just recently said, if you can just 5 times in one day, just 4 or 5 times say you're a DCO, that would be enough.
So, Zainab, what's the next goal? I mean, you've been ticking them off. And I'm not saying that there should be a next goal. In 10 years, you went from making your first jump to getting all your ratings to opening a drop zone, 2 locations in Kenya. Are you satisfied with where you're at, or what's the next thing?
Absolutely not. I'm still hungry. Next step is to get my PPL. I want to become a pilot, obviously, get more knowledge about planes, aircrafts, flying time, all that. And then I do want to get my master rigging. So I'll be going very soon to Derek Thomas again in Florida.
And I noticed you put on 2 boogies. And one thing that really impressed me about looking at what the itinerary was how much detail. It wasn't just simply, hey, show up at the drop zone and we're going to jump all day. It was landing at the golf course. It was landing on the beach. It was, staying or eating at nice restaurants. I mean, it was really not just, hey, show up, we're going to jump as hard as we can all day. It looked like there was so much intention putting in to ensure that if you came to your drop zone and came to your boogie, that you were going to have a life-changing experience. I was like, wow, there's so much thought and intention that went into that. Can you share any more detail about it?
Yes. Every skydiver that comes to Kenya at my drop zone, I want to give them the best time. I want to give them the best of both worlds, and we do have quite a bit to offer in Kenya. It's not just about skydiving, it's about the food, the culture, the people. A lot of skydivers have never been to Africa or to Kenya, and this is what I want to show them, what we have to offer. It's and yes, you're right about the details to it as well, like where the accommodation is going to be, transport, picking them up from the airport, either by, well, with the aircraft or by road. And it's a whole different experience for them. The noise, the sounds, the smells, it's quite different. And I wanted to give that to the skydivers coming for the boogie. I want to make Kenya the one of the best destination boogies ever.
You know what I love, Zainab, is as you express that, you light up. You've completely, I can see that you're speaking so much from your heart. You're so passionate. What are you most proud of in all of this? I mean, there's been so much.
Well, there has been quite a bit of proud moments for me. Like I said, when my mom did her first tandem, and that was a very profound, proud moment for me. Being able to do the closing ceremony for the Ladies European tournaments here on the golf course. Those have been proud moments. I've done the opening ceremony for the East African Safari Rally, which started on the ridge as well. Hopefully, I am going to be jumping in Diani on the 20th of October for the Travel Awards ceremony that's going to happen in the first one that's going to happen in Africa, in Diani. So, I do have a lot of goals and achievements that I want to go through. Those will be proud moments too.
Undeniably. For anyone listening going, wow, this sounds like an amazing place. What do you want them to know? If somebody wants to visit you, how can they go about doing that?
Definitely, they can contact me, Zainab Alibhai at Gojam Kenya. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We've got a YouTube channel too. They can follow us on that one. I can share you my email and the company's email and phone numbers. They can definitely get in touch with me and my team anytime.
Zainab, you are a credit to skydiving. I don't want to say an inspiration to women, an inspiration to everybody. Just true grit, determination, and following your heart. And I'm really grateful to know you and grateful that we got to share your story today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, and one of the other achievements that I want to do is become an examiner. There is no examiner here. So hopefully with the mentorship from a lot of other good people, I'll get there one day.
Let's make an agreement now that when you get your instructor examiner rating, that we'll interview again and talk about that journey.
Okay. Deal.
Great deal. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies, Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.